This week, I'm going to go ahead and start with questions that did come in. And anyway, so I don't know if I talked about this already, but Bob asked this question of me recently, and I can't remember if I talked about it last week or if it was this week, or I can't remember when it happened. So forgive me if I'm duplicating, but I just wanted to make sure that I talk about it in front of the class. So the question, he was talking about when I mentioned the 87.5% sweet spot for measuring probability on the MDM chart. And then when I showed the chart, it brought up some questions in Bob's mind. And so I just want to clarify one of the things. So I said 87.5% probability, and I said that because that's what I've said for so many years. But honestly, when we figured out the 87.5% probability was the sweet spot, we didn't have all the tools that we have now. So I've been saying that for some time, and I just want to point out that it is more dynamic than that. The sweet spot isn't necessarily the same spot, so it might be around 87.5% most of the time, but it may not be the sweet spot today. So as everything in the market goes, today's data and current stuff that we have is going to be more valid than what we may have had in the past. So I'm going to show you really quick what I was talking about, and I'm going to show you the best way to look at it going forward. So let me go into odds online. So, and what I was talking about with that 87.5% sweet spot is basically saying that in the past, that tended to be the sweet spot for guessing your probability, because that was where the biggest difference was between the actual movement of the market and the theoretical probability. Okay. But now that we have this MDM chart, we didn't have this MDM chart back when we figured that out. And so really what we want to do is just the sweet spot is going to be where there's the biggest gap between the theoretical and the actual price distribution of the stock price. So wherever the biggest gap is, that's about the right spot. Okay. So I would, and I told this to Bob already, but I would say this to everybody else. So the biggest gap, wherever you see the biggest gap between these two, that would be the sweet spot. And if you're doing it on the call side, the biggest gap on this side, the biggest gap between these two. And you can just put your mouse on any day and it'll show you those numbers right there that you can use to measure the gap if you want to. Or you can just eyeball it like I do. I just eyeball it. I don't actually get out and measure and stuff like that. But if you do, that's great. If you do, that's great. So the sweet spot will change as the market changes, and that's going to be the most valid thing that I can offer you going forward. So if you didn't have this measure don't model chart, then I would still probably use the theoretical probability of 87.5%, because it still tends to be about the sweet spot or close to it. So if I didn't have this, I would probably still use that. But since I do have this, I can actually just find the biggest gap to get that sweet spot. Okay. I hope that helps. That's where you'll get the biggest bang for your buck over time.